Hey, welcome to the Commerce Hero Show. Today, I am joined by two very special friends. We've got Jen from TaxJar. Jen, say hello.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
TaxJar is a fully distributed remote team that obviously helps with taxes and stuff like that for e-commerce. And then we've got Eric Hansen of Classy Llama fame, who's a big fan of in-office, on-site kind of team culture.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Hey, so we're going to be just having kind of an all-out brawl here. We're going to keep it as civil as humanly possible, but we're, so Jen is a big fan. By the way, I have to talk about the huge elephant in the room. I am rocking the TaxJar shirt. I don't know what it is about these TaxJar shirts. I love them. And so I might be a little bit biased. I'm a little bit more towards the remote side of the house, but I'm going to try to be as neutral as I can as a moderator here. And we'll talk about some of the different pros and cons. So it'll be a pretty, free flowing conversation and stuff. We've also got, we've got Mark, the CEO of TaxJar in the chat room. How's it going, Mark? Thanks for joining us. And feel free to ask questions in the chat. We can respond to them. And Jen, why don't you get us started? Give us sort of your thoughts on remote versus in-house.
Well, sure. So, I've worked remotely for a long time. I had my own company for a while. I had a couple of, employees and contractors. They were remote, but that was like a 3-person more lifestyle business. So not really what I want to talk about. At TaxJar, we have 39 people. We have been remote since day one. And one of the really interesting things about us is that we in our second, we get together twice a year. So we do get together as a team twice a year. And our second big get together, we all just sort of said, why we like to work at TaxJar, what's important to us. And so many people said it's important to be remote, to be able to be at home with children, to be able to live in kind of a far flung area. I live out in the country in the middle of nowhere. It would be impossible.
Where do you live? You're out in Atlanta area? Or?
Yeah, like about an hour north of Atlanta though.
Okay, so in the mountains. Yeah. Up in the mountains.
Exactly. And I don't want to move. I don't want to live in San Francisco. I am too cheap. Not going to happen.
I think we're all too cheap to live in San Francisco.
That's just we are universal. Now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But so that's it's very important to us. We had pushback from investors and interested parties at TaxJar about being remote. And we said, no, we're going to make it work. So now we're up to 39 people and we are making it work great. We've been profitable for a long time and just, we're killing it.
Very good. Very good. It's interesting you mentioned investors. I think I saw a tweet this morning from, I can't remember his name, one of the guys that started Stack Overflow and started Discourse forum software, really internet famous dude. And he said something to the effect of, I always find it funny how these Silicon Valley companies that are so cutting edge think that like the future of work is people all together in an office. And you could make an argument that, the workforce is sort of distributing and that does look like maybe the direction things are going a little bit in the future. But anyway, Eric, what are your thoughts? What's your opening statement here?
All right. So Classy Llama, we've been around for just over 10 years. I've been with the company the whole time. And
by the way, you're the original founder of the company, right?
Kurt and I are the co-founders. Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So we're a team of about 60 people. About 90% of us are in office. We do have some remote employees, but it's predominantly an in-office team. We've grown from, 5 people working in a garage 10 years ago, where it was so hot that we had to lift up the garage door and stick an AC unit in it. Here we are 11 years later. We have 3 different buildings kind of in a campus. And there's a lot of friendships here at Classy Llama. A lot of people that have worked here for a very long time. And so we all really enjoy that experience of being in the office, getting to see each other. I have 2 of my best friends work here. And it's kind of, I kind of had that question of, would we be nearly as good of friends if we were working remotely, especially if we were not in the same town. So one of the things we struggle with for sure is being in Springfield, Missouri. We have a population of 300,000 in the greater area. So finding talent in Springfield is tough. And so we have to kind of grow a lot of our own talent and get people out of colleges. or people that really don't even know PHP or certainly not Magento, and train them up. But I personally have found it to be very rewarding working in an office with a lot of friends and even colleagues who I just get to interact with. Not necessarily friends, but there's just more personal ties as a result of that.
Yeah. I mean, and to be completely honest, like I'm a big fan of remote. I've been doing it for, I think, 5-6 years now. Also, a big part of what we do at Commerce Hero is help people to hire remotely. And yet at the same time, I find that maybe the past couple of years, I've really felt like I need more of that human interaction. Before I moved to Austin, I started working out of a co-working space. And that kind of helped a little bit. I mean, we should probably talk a little bit about co-working spaces. Those can be helpful. But there is something different about having relationships where you're really working together, really involved with each other. And so just to be totally honest, like that's something that I struggle with. And I think that when you work remotely, you have the freedom and flexibility to sort of build your own social support network, whether that's a co-working space or just friendships, but you have to be more proactive because I remember reading some stats, some large percentage of people's friendships come from work in their adult life. So like, Jen, what do you think about that? Like how do you think about building up that support network? And by the way, you're getting a bunch of love in the chat. Travis says TaxJar is one of our preferred solutions. David Edmondson also has his TaxJar shirt on. So,
oh, hey, David.
Some love.
Yeah, David's a buddy. He lives close to me. More cityward. Okay, so I mean, what do you want me to respond to? Like the friendships in the office or creating a network?
Yeah, like how do you sort of replicate that? You know, the friendships that you get in the office, kind of out of the box. Like that can be a struggle to kind of replicate that, I think.
Yeah, I can, but I don't know. It's kind of funny that you guys mentioned that because now, back in the day, we were a small sales tax company. We would put out a job rec and get a few people applying. These days, though, we get hundreds of applicants for every job rec that we put out. And so we're able to be really picky. We pick people a lot of times who have remote experience. It's just, you can be a good employee, not a good remote employee. That's true. So now when our CEO, who's maybe in the chat, and other people are interviewing people, they will say, you know what, I miss working remotely. That was some of the best working relationships I've ever had. And I can 100% agree with them because we communicate all day, every day. You almost have to over communicate as a remote team because everything has to be documented. If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen, which is, it's an important way to be. So yeah, I mean, we use Basecamp, we can private message, we jump on Zoom calls, we jump on phone calls. And I have people who I consider like real genuine friends who work at TaxJar. We'll text and Snapchat and be silly, offline and online. We just, So I don't think so for like internal, I don't really see a problem with internal friendships. Yeah, you can't go to do stuff on the weekend as much. Yeah, that's true. But and then as for your network, like you're just got, your network out and about. That is true. If you're not going into an office, you may not meet, a client that comes in or something like that kind of thing. So you do have to be a little bit conscious about making friends with people on Twitter, like Kaylin Jordan and stuff like that. But, I think we still managed to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say one of the things that's different about my situation is like, I basically work for myself. And so I don't even have, I have a lot of people I interact with and a lot of friends and stuff like that, but I'm not even part of a team where you do interact really heavily together throughout the day. So that's probably one of the ways that it's even more challenging for me in particular. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You really do have can build pretty strong relationships, even though they're not in person.
Hey, one question I have for Jen is how often do you, with your coworkers, hop on a Zoom video call as opposed to just doing everything over chat?
A lot of times it's when we have to work out something kind of naughty, but now we do have like a daily call with our team.
What kind of naughty are we talking about?
KNOTTY, and kind of tricky. There we go.
I'm invoking my inner Myra. I'm not sure if Myra's on the chat. But.
I think she was going to try to be. But anyway, and Myra can help. Great VA, by the way. Just shout that out. But anyway, no. So yeah, when we're working on something tricky, we'll jump on Zoom a lot of times. Now we do have daily meetings, so it's not like we never see each other's faces. We have daily meetings. We do encourage you to keep the video on, just to, for sociability's sake. We have a weekly call with the entire team which is becoming crazy. Now that we have 39 people, it's like, you guys use Zoom, it becomes like the Brady Bunch view where there's like three pages of the Brady Bunch now, which is pretty crazy for us. But yeah, so we still, we do interact a lot in person. But yeah, mostly when we have a tricky problem. Otherwise, we do try to do it in writing, just because, once again, if it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Right. What do you think about, so one of the things, Eric, by the way, put together a very thorough list of pros and cons that I'm going to work off of. Thanks for that, Eric. And one of the things that you'd mentioned was the idea of sort of increased accountability when you're in office and, you're seeing each other's screens and stuff like that. You can't necessarily goof off on Reddit for a couple hours a day without anybody noticing. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. But so what are your thoughts on that, Eric, around accountability? Maybe we can get both of you guys like the increased accountability versus like, hey, like you want to hire people that are self-motivated and that don't necessarily need increased accountability. And yet we all need accountability on some level.
Yeah, I mean, I think so I have a team of developers I work with. There's about 6 of us. Several on the team, no issue if they want to work a couple days from home, work remotely even for a week. And then there are some who actually have even told me, hey, I don't want you to let me work from home because I'm going to get distracted. It's hard for me to kind of have a intense focus on work if I'm not sitting along other side people that are keeping me accountable. And in some ways, maybe that's a crutch of needing to have that person sitting next to you to make sure you stay focused. But everyone has different personalities, different temperaments. And I think there are some people where staying focused in a remote context would be really difficult. And I'd be curious, Jen, like, do you feel like everyone is a good fit for remote, or is the remote only right for certain types of people that are more motivated, self-driven?
Oh, great question. Yeah, no, it's only for certain types of people. Like when we first started TaxJar, we got a lot of entrepreneurs, people who either owned their own company at the time or had in the past. And that seemed to be really, you're self-motivated. You have to be to have started a company. So we had that. But now though, yeah, we do. We have a trial period when we're hiring. So we just sort of get to know people. It could be a couple weeks or it kind of depends on the department, a couple weeks, like a month or whatever. And so we get to know folks and see if they're going to be able to keep up. But yeah, I mean, as for self-motivation, we only hire people who are self-motivated. Like I could go goof off on Reddit right now. But I'm still like performing
at a
high level. Yeah, I am. Yeah, totally. What subreddit should I go to, you guys? No, but seriously, I mean, I could, because as long as I'm performing at my level, like I don't need to be in there. I don't need to be in the office 8 to 5. We just have to. And we have people that don't make it at TaxJar because they're just not accountable. So, and yeah, we also like our teams, we have goals. So it's not like we're just like, off running around doing whatever, surfing all day. But yeah, so as long as we, do what we have to do, like if I could work 5-6 hours a day and do everything that I needed to do to reach my goal, then I would be fine with that.
Right. And it's interesting. We talk about how some people aren't a fit for remote. I remember a friend of mine who we both worked for the same company and worked remotely for a period of time. And she was just super miserable, barely hanging on to life, and then moved to in person. And it was a little boring, man. And I've heard that actually, it's interesting and sort of a bit of a pain with Commerce Hero. I've had, I want to say 3 or 4 really great developers recently that were available. And I had a great remote gig for them and they weren't interested. Mm-hmm. And I was like, because, but they know, and I think people are starting to get familiarity with it. Maybe they've tried it, whether it's for them or not for them, they sort of know that and they're kind of more self-aware. I kind of wonder like what percentage of people it's good for. Like, is it like, 5% or 10 or 20%? Is it something that will increase over time as people get better with it, better with the tools, better with understanding how to do it properly? Because part of me feels like there's sort of this reverse urbanization trend. Like everybody used to all work remote, right? Like everybody used to just be a farmer and be self-employed and have their own business. And then with urbanization, industrialization, everybody moved into the cities to work together. And it's almost like there's this reverse trend in the opposite direction. So I kind of wonder like what percentage of people is it good for? And that's sort of a
Jen, what do you think?
Okay, I have a lot to say on this. I do think, and I am not trying to be shady whatsoever, Eric. I do think though that a lot of people do rely on their work for like their social life. And so, and especially, I'm not even talking about you guys, maybe like, I have friends who work in Silicon Valley and I'm here 14, 16 hours a day and we play foosball and we get drunk. And I'm like, I get it. Like that is your family basically, because you're dislocated from home and that's who you're with. But I think a lot of us at Taxstar, a lot of us are older. You don't have to guess how old I am, but I'm not 21. And so a lot of us are older. Yeah. Kaylin.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely.
But no, a lot of us are older. We have family. We have obligations. We have people who have caregiving obligations. We have most people at Taxstar, I think now over half, have children, one or more children. So we're just more, we don't really rely on work for our like social outlets. And so another thing we do like about, working remotely as well is it's very easy to like give back to your community. We try to talk about that a lot. Like, what are we doing? We can't go off and do things together, which actually kind of sucks. I think that would be kind of fun, to go volunteer with my team because they're really cool people. But, we're able to, have sort of other social life stuff going on because we're not working 14 hours a day and we're not commuting.
Yeah. And by the way, I just want to say, I know initially I set this up as like a battle, and really it's not. It's really is a conversation. I love, Eric, how you're asking questions, and it's really how can we learn from each other about when is one thing a fit versus another thing. I have a ton of respect for Classy Llama, one of the top agencies in the game, in my opinion. And I love the culture you guys have built. You guys will do fun things. And I think you talked about, Nerf wars and different things like that. And the video you guys put out recently, like the Imagine video, was really fun. And you wouldn't have been able to do that if you weren't in person. So I think it's cool to be able to kind of learn from each other. And that's really interesting what you're mentioning, Jen, about like, there is maybe a time of life where your work relationships are all your relationships. And then there's maybe a stage where it's like, hey, work is work. I love my work. I love my team, but it's work. And then I've got my family and my social life sort of separate from it.
And I think personally, there's a lot of wisdom to being careful about getting too close with all of your colleagues. For example, if you're reporting to somebody and you become really good friends, and then all of a sudden you're underperforming, and that person has to let you go, there's kind of creates that conflict of interest. And so there are some people here at Classy Llama who just really they don't come to any social events. They don't go out to like the informal team lunches. They're just like, you guys are my colleagues. I have my friends. There's that clear boundary. So
I think Aaron, is he not a team player?
I'm not gonna say any names.
I get the distinct impression Aaron's not a team player.
Aaron is an awesome member of the Classy Llama team.
I love Aaron so much.
Yeah.
No, sorry to interrupt. Actually, great point from Lizzie Greenberg in the chat. Working remotely is also a very different experience for a non-fully remote company versus a fully remote company. I know this is a topic we want to get into a little bit. There's some companies that are sort of from the ground up. We're fully distributed, fully remote. That really forces a lot of your tools and processes to work for everybody. Whereas other companies, and I see this all the time, they're mostly in office, but they're trying to find resources. Maybe a team member moves, and so then they've got this hybrid remote thing going. Wow. And those are sort of two different beasts.
Can I speak to that? Because there's maybe 8 people right now that working remotely for Classy Llama. Some of them lived here in Springfield and they wanted to move elsewhere. And so we're like, hey, we don't want to lose you, work remote. Other people, we just couldn't find anyone that met the criteria locally. And so we hired remote. And that's a hard experience. I mean, we call those people robots, very affectionately nicknamed them that. But like there's a lot of times you kind of forget about them. It's like, oh yeah, let's turn the webcam on so they can see us. We do this thing at Classy Llama every day where one person of the team gets in front of the entire team and just gives like a 3 to 6 minute synopsis of what's been going on in the past several months of their life. We call it podcast. And people can opt out of it if they want to, but it's kind of a cool way for us to get to know each other. And even the robots, they participate in that whenever it becomes their turn. But that's a scenario where a lot of times if the microphone's not close enough to that person speaking or the webcam is not pointed in the right direction, those people really feel left out. So we've tried to have a champion here internally. And I sometimes even take that role of like, hey, we have a staff meeting. Let's make sure we all speak up. Let's make sure that the webcam's pointed at the person who's speaking. But because we're not all remote, most people are not thinking about those remote workers.
Yeah, remote culture can be really fragile. That's the thing. Like you have to work to create a good culture. So we make sure people are cultural fits. We get together twice a year because in-person bonding, like I will not say that that's not important. I do think it's important, in-person get-togethers. But we've hired recently a director of people ops. And so that's a person who, makes sure our culture is going strong, make sure everybody gets a birthday present, make sure we do anniversaries, we do skill shares, things like that. So yeah, it's definitely, so I think when you have some, hybrid kind of not in the office people and then some in the office people, we've never tried it at Taxstar, so I can't really give an informed opinion about it. But yeah, I can see where that would be really difficult if you're not 100% focused on making a good culture for your remote people.
Yeah. Question from Zishan in the chat. How do they check the accountability of the smart people who do the job of 6 hours in 3 and then just take the time off? So I think what he's saying is, let's say there's somebody that can get the job done in half the time, and then they want to spend the rest of the time, surfing for all intents and purposes. And I think what this question kind of gets into is something we touched on a little bit earlier, which is sort of measuring progress, measuring goals. Like when you're in office, sort of by default, it's like butts and seats kind of a thing, versus when you're remote, you're kind of forced to to quantify what are these goals? How are we meeting them? Are we not meeting them? So how do you guys think about that, Jen?
Great question. Yeah, we have goals. So yeah, if you can get it done in 3 hours, fine, go ahead. It's probably not going to be that easy. We're way too busy. So we are probably going to need, you to put the hours in, but yeah, if you can get it done. So basically we're divided into teams. Like we have marketing team, but then developers have several teams. And then we just have, things that we promise that we're going to do and we have to get them done. And that might mean, 6 hours a day, or it might mean, a lot more hours a day. However, we are really about work-life balance. Like I said, a lot of Taxstar kids. So we don't want to be that company where people work in 12-hour days or even 10-hour days. Like we want people to have, work is fun. I enjoy it. I'm doing a good job. The company's profitable and moving the needle, but this is not my entire life. So yeah, if they can get it done in 3 hours, go right ahead. I just, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I want to say a bit about the personal work balance. That's something that Classy Alum has always held to. Kurt, from the very beginning, even in the startup days, was very good about prioritizing family. I less so, especially before I was married. I worked 80-hour weeks. Before I got married, I said, okay, I'm going to work 40-hour weeks, and I've pretty much reined myself into that. Being at the office, driving home, thankfully I only have like a 6-minute commute, but there's still that separation of here's my workspace, here's my home space. For people that work remotely out of their homes, how do you create that same separation between the two?
Oh gosh, good question. So I actually, when I built this house, I designed and built this house, I made a separate office. I have to go outside to get to this office where I'm at right now. So
That's
it's
awesome.
hard. It's hard for me if I'm like, oh, I need to go send one email. I need to be on my computer to do it. I have to go outside and use a key and open a door. It's a lot easier to put that off until tomorrow. Now that's just me. Other people, most people have, a lot of people are in basements, it seems like. We have one guy who goes to coffee shops. That's where he just likes to get his work done. And then we do have some people, that they might be more like in the corner of the living room or something like that. So yeah, I probably couldn't speak for them as much, but if they're still working at Taxstar, then they're getting their job done. So it's working for them no matter what. And we do have, like I said, it's more mature people a lot of times. So it's people who kind of, have been able to carve out a space. We have young people at Taxstar too, and they're all killing it too. And they've made it work.
With the corner of the living room type of a thing, it's so I used to have less space in my house, so I'd work in the bedroom and kind of right up against the kids and things like that. So that can be super challenging. And then you have to either, I was sort of a bit of a Nazi about it, don't come in the room, doors locked, with young kids, versus letting them come in and kind of distract you, which can be tough. And do you feel like Jen, it's obviously you don't do this because you said you do have people in the corner of the living room, but do you think maybe that as a best practice, when you're hiring people, is that a fair question to ask? Hey, do you have a dedicated workspace? Or at the end of the day, is it just a question of whether they get the work done or not?
I'm probably not the right person to ask this, but I think we maybe do ask people that. But no, I'm not sure. So maybe somebody in the chat would be able to answer that question better than me. It's been a while since I've hired anybody. I'm staffed up. It's all good.
Yeah. And then on the whole topic of like senior versus junior sort of hires, right? So like I think the approach that people tend to take when they're hiring local, really building their local in-office team, is to hire more junior and let's say within the context of like hiring Magento developers. And it can be David Bull in the chat mentioned it's not really possible or realistic, most Magento centric companies, to hire full-time local because it's just too expensive. There's very minimal resources. So the approach is more so to hire more junior people and really focus on training them. And I'm sure at Classy, you guys do a tremendous job of bringing people in, training them, getting them up to speed quickly. But it's probably not, I mean, one thing I think I'm guessing we can all agree on is that hiring somebody that's more junior on a remote basis is just probably does not work.
Doesn't. We don't really hire juniors. You need to have proven experience to work with us. And that's just a choice that we've made. And, it could get to a point someday where we can't do that anymore. Maybe we have literally hired everybody who cares about sales tax in the entire world, because how many can there really be? And,
like 45 tops.
Yeah, I know, right? We have 39 of them. So we're almost there. But yeah, seriously. But no, we're still at that point where we, once again, I don't know, I keep saying this mature company, like I hate to make it sound like we all have gray hair and long beards, but like seriously, we don't really hire juniors. We try to hire somebody who's ready to, take on the role, hit the ground running.
Yeah. And then Eric, what do you see as some of the benefits of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth as far as like hiring more junior people and training them up, but what is the approach you guys take there? And what do you see as some of the benefits to going that route?
Yeah, great question. So I think in the tech industry, a few years ago, there was this trending hashtag on Twitter, talk pay. And one of the prevailing things that came out of that was you have to go hop from company to company to increase your salary. In general, I think a lot of times we'll see people coming applying at Classy Llama and they have a year here, 6 months here, a year here. And I think that turnover tends to be high in a lot of tech companies. At Classy Llama, we've had an amazing retention of tech talent. We have multiple senior engineers that have been here at Classy Llama working in Magento for 6, 7, 8 years. And so I think when you bring someone in to an awesome culture like Classy Llama, you make sure that we're not overworking them, giving them a good structure, training them. I think in turn that results in really good retention of that talent. That's one of the huge assets that Classy Llama has, is the large group of people that have been here for many years. As opposed to if you bring someone in that already knows Magento, you're paying them to hit the ground running, but then they might be looking elsewhere a year from now because they're not as plugged in and as connected to the team.
Right. Absolutely.
I have a good stat though. We've only had one person ever leave TaxJar. So
hey,
that's a good stat.
Yeah. I mean, willingly, like, we do, there are people that don't work out, obviously, but yeah. So, and I think too, same thing. It's just, you hire somebody, it's the the trial period that we have, we make sure, but we've had people, it's not like it's a trial for us, for them. It's for them to check us out as well. We've had people drop out of the trial. We've had plenty of people be like, sales tax is boring. I don't like this. I'm never going to see you guys, and that's fine too. So yeah, I think it's a difference in how we do. And you know what, really, I would love to be able to hire some juniors just because, I love kids. I come from a rural area in, rural Georgia, and I would love to be able to get some more, kind of people who maybe never had a tech job or don't see tech as feasible for them because they don't live in San Francisco or they don't live in Austin. I would love to be able to do that. So, that's definitely something to think about in the future.
Yeah. And then Jen, you mentioned that you've only had one person leave. I tend to be super nosy. So if any of my questions are, you can't answer, you don't want to, totally fine. But do you know like what your retention rate is or like what or not your retention rate, what your average tenure is, like as far as the average amount of time people have stuck around?
No idea. We're about to turn 5 and
okay.
So yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. We're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good.
Yeah. That's awesome. One of the things, the idea around hiring juniors is really interesting. I wonder if there's a way, because if this is, let's say, sort of a trend that's going to continue to grow, like how do people that are more junior get started with these types of jobs when it's I don't know if maybe there's maybe maybe it's a training thing. Like, there's code boot camps, and there's interesting companies like the Lambda School where people go for a year and get really intensive training, things like that. Maybe it has to do with training, but it'd be interesting if there's some sort of maybe a hybrid model where people can get experience and get to the point they need to be at where they can really function in a remote role. Because that's kind of a tricky challenge.
We've hired a couple folks out of code boot camps, not as full developers, like it's kind of a hybrid developer success role, and they are amazing. And so I can totally see, and I'm not trying to like make a prediction in the future, but I can totally see those people becoming developers. So, I mean, that may be one way to do that. But yeah, like when it comes to diversity or just different kind of people you don't normally see in tech, I am open to any idea about how to, get those people at TaxStar or any other, or Classy Llama or any tech company, or just, in the conversation.
Right. Interesting comment from Brian Claridge in the chat. They leave a Google Hangout connected to a big TV open 24/7 at the office for remote people to pop in and out for meetings, stand-ups, or just to shoot the breeze, which it's a pretty cool idea. Any cool, like just in terms of tooling, we talked a little bit about Zoom and video meetings and stuff like that, but Eric or Jen, any just ideas around tooling that helps teams to collaborate in general?
You go ahead, Eric. I've been talking my head off.
Yeah, I mean, of course. So we're still stuck in like the stone ages of using Skype, although migration to Slack is coming soon. Yeah. So we have Skype group chats for the remote workers. Being able to just all of us chat in there is one way to stay connected. Definitely for us, anytime that I interact with any of our remote workers, I really heavily gravitate towards using a video chat as opposed to just typing back and forth, because that allows me to stay connected with them. And we've toyed around with having like a big screen up where all those people can just have video on, but ultimately none of those things really ended up being very practical, or we tried it for like a week and then it kind of fell by the wayside. But I think definitely being intentional about having that FaceTime over video has been really important for us to stay connected.
Nice.
And something I forgot actually to even mention is we just started this. I guess our last Jar Fest was in February. Jar Fest is our once or twice a year get together. And after that, we decided we wanted to pair. So like people who want to watch a developer work, and it's kind of, once again, training juniors as well. So somebody who wants to watch a developer work, well, they'll open up, what they're doing on camera just for an hour or two. And our success team does the same thing. We're super all about success, just because we feel like if you work at this company, you need to be talking to the customers. It doesn't matter if you never, interact with them in any other time. So we have those two sort of pairing sessions that we do. It used to be called Pairing is Caring, but now it's called Pairing is Scaring. So yeah, because I mean, some of our developers are like formidably talented at what they do. Like I watched a couple of these and I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. Is that a terminal? Put it away. I don't want to see it. So yeah, I don't want to know how the app works. Leave me alone. But yeah, so that's another important thing. I think that's really helpful as well, just for, once training juniors and for just, keeping us connected. And once you see like somebody else do their job, you gain a whole new respect for them. I respected them first, but now I really do. And I just never want to be a developer.
Yeah.
So Jen, you mentioned that you've only had one person leave TaxStar.
Yes.
In our 10 years, we have had more than that leave Classy Llama, but we've actually had at least 3 or 4 leave and then come back. One of which was a Magento developer, worked here for about 5 years, left for a couple years, working remotely. And part of that was the attraction of being able to work remotely. And then he's actually been back at Classy Llama now for a couple years. We call those reborn llamas. So
you guys have a word for everything.
Yeah. So I talked to him before this discussion. I'm like, hey, I want to hear from you, somebody who's lived both sides recently, and now you're back working in office. What are the pros and cons? And he gave me some really good feedback. He said most days he feels like he could probably get more work done at home. So that's one.
Ooh, that was an interesting plot twist, man.
That's not what I expected.
I like the transparency on that. Yeah, I love
it. He said ultimately he likes being back here at Classy. Obviously, he came back to the team, but and he typed up some notes for me. He said, one of the benefits of being in the office is clear and quick communication channels. You can be unblocked more quickly. I mean, I experienced that just this morning. A developer working with me, he was like, hey, I have a quick question on this. It took me 30 seconds, shifted over, and I'm back. As opposed to him like pinging me on Skype, I probably would have ignored him. It might have been an hour later before I got back with him. Right. Which I think proper planning, you can get around a lot of that. And then he currently now is actually working as a developer on our marketing team. So he manages our website and does an amazing job with that. But he said, proximity also sparks conversations that probably otherwise wouldn't happen. More important for creatives than developers. So he also mentioned to me the book Remote by Basecamp, formerly 37 Signals. Yeah. He said that has just a lot of really good ideas for working remote. So I'm curious, Jen, do you have any resources that your company recommends for how to make remote work better?
Oh gosh, you know what? I am not the one that reads all the remote books. So our CEO, he's really good on that stuff. But you know what? I mean, I really do recommend talking with other remote companies though. And that's anything professionally, right? If you try to go it alone, you're never going to do well. So talk to other remote companies, read up on resources. And I guess the biggest thing is really just focus on your culture. Sometimes it feels like, oh, we're going to stop for an hour and have a meeting, but everything's on fire. Why would we do that? Well, because your culture is really important. It's just, things are going to stay on fire if you don't have a strong culture. So that's my, my top tip for remote is get along and,
it's interesting that you mention Basecamp. I think that they, possibly, Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson, possibly two of the biggest proponents for remote work on the internet. And yet they do have an office. I think it's in Chicago. I think I remember recently reading about how they revamped their office and they wanted to have like this beautiful place for people to come if they wanted to. Like maybe, I think they said on average people will come in 1 day a week or something like that. But they wanted to have this beautiful place and they built, I think, their own building and really are focused. They really care a lot about helping people to focus and things like that. So I almost think you could argue that the best solution is like a hybrid situation, not in the sense, Jen, of like that, like where those issues where you've got in-office culture that isn't compatible with remote, but where it's a fully remote culture, but there is a place where you can go if you want to go, if you want to hang out with people, if you want to get together, if you want to have a meeting. I feel like that could be an interesting combo.
I don't know. I think I disagree with that one.
Don't buy it.
I want to live out here with my donkeys and cows. And, there's not going to be an office near here. And I don't know. I think you really have to go all in on remote. You can't like try to hedge your bets at all. You have to be like, we're a remote company. Let's 100% do this thing. And that's just me.
So Jen, one question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
So I'm thinking about the types of companies that I've seen kind of promote remote work. TaxJar, Basecamp, both of those, you guys are product companies or you have a service that you're selling. Have you seen very many agencies be fully remote versus like, hey, I can't find any Magento developers. I'm going to go hire 10 remote developers, but we still have a core hub of the agency is based in Chicago or LA or Springfield, Missouri in the middle of nowhere.
No.
I think one of the big ones that comes, I think one that comes to mind is Automatic, is the company that builds WordPress. Then again, I don't know if I guess they're a product company.
Yeah. I'd say they're a product company.
Yeah. It probably is a little bit more prevalent with product companies. There are definitely some agencies that do a lot of remote hiring, that I'll work with and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a good point.
I wonder if there's something about the nature of an agency versus the nature of a product company that lends itself better to being remote versus in office.
I mean, it could be. That's why I owned an agency back when I had my own company. We kind of worked together, kind of worked remotely. But yeah, we did get together and like put our heads together when we were trying to come up with a new campaign or something like that. So I don't know. I think that's a really good question. That's something I couldn't answer, but I'm probably open to debate.
Yeah. Had some questions. By the way, we're talking about office space stuff, and James Anale mentioned he's a really interesting dude. He like they have like a van, and they cruise around the world traveling and stuff. So he said my whole home is a 2x3 square foot camper van, which is bedroom, kitchen, living room, and office, 2 adults and a kid, and still managed to get work done, which is pretty cool. And then a question from Marcel Howery. Do you have devs working from remote in different time zones, and how do you handle that? I think that's probably for you, Jen. How do you guys handle time zones?
We do. We have devs everywhere from Barcelona to the West Coast of the United States. Like, so we mostly hired. So we have mostly hired in the United States, or all exclusively hired in the United States up until now. We're looking at now expanding. We have a dev in Barcelona. So yeah, it's just, they do have like an all dev stand up. I think that's once a week. And then each team, where our devs, I think, are 3 teams. So they have their stand ups every day. I hear a lot of them are fast because devs are like, I don't want to talk to you right now. I want to get back to, whatever I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, it seems to work out really well. Nothing's on fire, and nobody is complaining. So as for tips on how to do that, I don't know. I think the stand up and the meeting is really good. I don't know. I might think of something later. Like, I'm not being on the dev team. There might be something I'm missing here.
Yeah. Hey, did you see the comment from TJ? I think he totally hit the nail on the head. He said, I think the value of an agency is more in the people who work there, where a product company is more tied to the product. So a fully remote agency probably devalues it somewhat. In an agency, the product are the employees and the work they put out.
That's an interesting one. And TJ, by the way, Jamerson is a good example of an agency that's very heavily remote. And I know he's said in the past that just out of necessity, being in Alabama, not having access to a lot of resources, they have really focused heavily on remote. But that's an interesting. That's a really interesting point of view. On the time zone thing, Jen, I mean, it's almost like, because hiring mostly within the US, time zones aren't really that much of an issue. Yeah. Like, if you're a company that, has people in Australia and India and, different parts of Asia, then you start to get into some different challenges. I know one of the things I remember reading in that book, Remote, is you want to have like at least 4 hours of overlap. Mm-hmm. Within your work days, so that you can kind of collaborate. I like to use that as a rule of thumb too. I think 4 hours is a pretty decent chunk of time.
Yeah, I've talked to other companies who are like, oh, our Chinese team, they won't be able to, come live to this meeting, but we'll record it for them later. And that kind of, to me, does feel kind of like, oh man, but it makes perfect sense. You don't want them up at midnight just to, to come to your 1 hour webinar or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think it does help that we are all, approximate in time.
Totally. And then Eric, question from Russell. Has Classy Llama found that talent is getting harder to find locally within reason from you guys?
I would say no harder than it has been the past 10 years. I mean, we pretty much develop our own talent. So we're bringing in either from college or people, ideally people are going to have in office, or rather on-job experience, whether they're writing Java, .NET, Python. We bring them in, teach them PHP, teach them Magento. That's what it's been for most agencies over the past 10 years. If you're in Chicago or other places where you can basically go and like poach developers from other companies, and I say poach, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but there's a lot more talent in somewhere like Chicago, unlike Springfield, Missouri, where we're the only Magento agency and we grow our own talent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's What question from, or comment from Brian was, what I hate about modern office setups these days, shoving everyone into open areas with no privacy or place to focus. What's your guys's, Eric, how do you guys approach like your office setup as far as open offices versus cubicles versus office?
I mean, our office space right now is a beautiful office space. I mean, I think we have some pictures on our website, but it is mostly open, and that's a challenge. There's the space I work in is about 20 people, and so there's a couple guys that are in that area that are pretty loud, and the people working nearby them are like, hey, can you lower your voice? Pretend like you're in a library. This is not not a gymnasium. The people like listening to music. Blocking noise out with music helps. But I think that's one thing that we're actually looking at moving away from as we move into the future, is having more closed spaces and having more private offices, and not having that we're just going to be in this huge bullpen where you can maybe it increases collaboration, but it also does a lot of things for just creating more distractions. And I think especially developers having that context switching of somebody walks by and like interrupts them. And if they're in the middle of troubleshooting something, when they get back to work, they're going to have to kind of cue everything up again in their head before they can make progress on that task. So I think we're moving more towards more closed spaces.
Got it. Yeah. It does seem like there's kind of a trend in that direction. And it's funny how you talked about the guy that said he got more done working from home. I remember for myself, when I worked for Sweet Tooth up in Canada, and I worked remotely, and then I went there in person for a couple of weeks at a time, a few times. And I just felt like I got nothing done. Also partly because I didn't have my work set up. I didn't have my monitor, I didn't have my whole, my Barca lounger, whatever the heck this thing's called. And it was just, it was just tough for me. I felt like I got a lot less done in that kind of a setup. But Jen, you mentioned, you talked about I can't remember the name was for them, but your get-togethers where you guys get together twice a year. What did you call those?
Jarfest.
Yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit more about those. It sounds fun.
Oh man, it's so fun. So first of all, it's twice a year. It's usually like February, September, because those are sort of less busy times for us. We don't really have less busy times anymore, but we used to. So twice a year, we all get together. We'll go to usually a big city, Boston, Santa Monica, Chicago is going to be our next one. So, and then we have they were 3 days. Now they're more like 4 full days. We'll do a whole day of just like team bonding and hanging out because there's always going to be new people. I think this next coming one is going to be the most new people we've ever had. So just hang out. A lot of times we go to baseball games. Some of us were big baseball fans, but we're doing more stuff. Like we had board game night last time, which was so fun. Like it was probably the most fun we've ever had together. So we're definitely going to do that again. We always do karaoke because, why not? We, interestingly, we found out that we got to 10,000 customers when we were doing karaoke.
Not so, like right in the middle of a karaoke session.
Exactly. Like in karaoke in Boston, which is our CEO's hometown. So that was like a really special moment that we were all together, And we do that. But then we also have and it's not all like fun and games. We have 2 or 3, like really kind of 2 full days of being in the office. And sometimes the developers they'll get together and do a hackathon. Marketing team will get together and break out and do a breakout session. But a lot of times it's set our goals for the next 6 months. Monetary goals, especially like we all know how we're doing financially at TaxJar. We get stats every morning from our CEO, what's going on. We know how many customers we have. We know how much money's in the bank. We know, did we lose customers yesterday? Did we gain them? So we just talk about that and say, hey, can we break this goal? How are we going to get there? We have now, really to concede a point, we have made a lot of our big decisions at Jarfest. So it's almost kind of like we get together for a week, we make a big decision and we go off. But then we go off and just, iterate. We will work the plan. So we're getting kind of bigger where we have to have mini Jarfests during the middle because sometimes, something changes. Sales tax is in the news a lot. Stuff is changing all the time. We might have to, pivot a little bit. I hate that word pivot, but, we might have to, we need to pay attention to this. The federal government's about to change something kind of thing. So, but that's what we do. Any questions about Jarfest? It's really fun.
No, that's it. Can I come?
You can come. Special guest.
That's the main thing I want to know. No, that's really cool. And I think and that's also one of the things that Basecamp talks a lot about is their in-persons get-togethers. And I think that's probably a really a necessary component for any distributed team to really thrive together on a long-term basis. Somebody in the chat mentioned BitBull, which is an agency out in Italy. Alessandro runs that, and they're fully distributed, but they're also mostly within Italy, so they're able to get together from time to time when they need to. And so, Eric, what do you guys like to do to kind of build culture? Obviously, you have the luxury of being able to do it more often, so I don't know if you guys do things monthly or.
Yeah, so we have every morning we have a podcast where someone talks about little tidbits from their life, what's going on.
Why do you call it podcast, by the way? I'm just curious.
I think it's
stealing that.
Yeah, I don't know why we call it podcast. I think because sometimes people, I don't know. Maybe because we're actually use this mic so that the remote people can hear, and it's kind of
okay. Got it.
So every month we have team lunches. Each of individual teams in the company, they go out. We do a monthly kind of family gathering where we'll do different events. laser tag. We'll go to like the zoo. There's always like dinner provided, spouses, kids are invited. So that's, again, like something, few people opt out of that, but a lot of people enjoy it and really value that as a part of kind of developing the culture. Anytime a new person starts, we'll have like a big lunch or breakfast or something provided for the team just to kind of hang out. Those are probably the main aspects of, and then just the, water cooler conversations, just running to people in the kitchen or filling up your water bottle and getting to know them that way.
Right. That's really cool. And do you find that, like how Jen mentioned, at the Jar Fest is when big decisions tend to be made as a group? Do you find there are certain times or events or types of get-togethers where you tend to see bigger decisions being made, or the kind of the momentum of the company being able to shift or move in a certain direction?
So every year there's a kind of a leadership summit where the leaders in the company go away for a few days. Probably something similar to JarFest, except it's a smaller group of people. So I would say there's the big decisions made there, but because all of us are around each other all the time, we don't really have any company-wide retreat at all.
Gotcha. So, I remember actually seeing you guys do, I can't remember if it's called the Client Summit or something like that, where you get together with your team and with your clients.
Yes. Yeah. So yep. We've been doing that now. I think we're in our second year, and this will be going into our third year, where we basically invite all of our clients to come out. We pay for their lodging, have some fun events for them, but also have some educational things talking about, the landscape of e-commerce. And also we found that just getting merchants to talk to each other is really where some of the biggest value is. So yeah, that's a pretty cool event we do once a year.
Yeah. I thought that was really smart. I can't think of any other company that I've seen that's done that. I thought that was really cool. Jen, you guys would have like 10,000 customers all in one place if you did that. That would be.
I don't know. I think I'm still stealing that idea. We've tried a couple of times to get a customer like to our Jar Fest, just, hey, let's talk to this customer. But I don't know. I think either, timing didn't work out. Like we would have flown them out and everything like that. I think either timing or just, we were like, are we all, 30 of us going to sit here and like pepper a customer with questions? Maybe not the best sort of idea. So I don't know, Eric, I may reach out to you, see how you got that together. Yeah. I'm going to steal several ideas from you guys.
Sounds good. Hey, on a personal note, Kaylin, is today your birthday?
It is. I've been trying to keep it a secret, but
happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for sharing an hour of it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. So let's see. So Eric, have we changed your mind at all? Have we convinced you?
Okay. So as somebody who on my LinkedIn profile says that I have Magento development experience, I get hit up multiple times a month saying, hey, we have some cool opportunity. So in such and such place. And, either they want you to move or work remotely. And neither of those are of interest to me. Like, I just love what we have here at Classy Llama. And I don't know if a lot of people know this. So I co-founded the company 5 years ago. I sold my stake of the company to my partner. And so I've been working for the last 5 years as an employee. And initially I was like, I'm going to go do something different and go freelance or work, like start another company. But
interesting.
As time went on, I'm like, I just love what we have going on here. I love the company so much that I have no reason. There's nothing that's compelling enough to get me to leave this company. And so I've been here for now over 5 years as an employee. Right. So I think because I have such an awesome opportunity here, I'm pretty set on being an in-office worker. If I lived out in the more remote areas where I'd have to drive for long distances or relocate, I would absolutely consider more of a remote work scenario. But I think I would probably be more inclined to go to a co-working space. I have 4 children, an amazing wife who takes care of them. That's her full-time job. Her job is harder than mine. But my house setup isn't really such that I can go to a separate outbuilding or office or anything, Jen, like you have. So I think I would probably be interested in more of a co-working environment. And
you could always have David Alger just build something for you. I mean,
I could.
Built his own house from scratch with his bare hands.
Yeah. So maybe we could talk a little about co-working. I mean, Jen, you mentioned, like, do you have any people at Taxstar that are working out of co-working spots?
Um, I know of one that goes to a coffee shop, and I think everybody else pretty much works at home. So
Really?
we don't, and we have a lot of perks at TaxJar. I don't know if we have a co-working perk. I would have to look that up, but I don't know if we had, hey, we'll pay so and so a month for your co-working, if people would take us up on that or not. That's just something I probably should have looked up before we had this conversation. Didn't even think about it. So, but no, we don't have a ton of people that co-work. It doesn't seem like.
Yeah. When I worked in a co-working space a few different times, and there's different types of co-working spaces there are sort of smaller ones. There are ones that are really big with lots of amenities and ping pong tables and tons of people and tons of events, and they really try to intentionally build community and stuff like that. The last one I was at is called Cross Campus, and that one was pretty cool. It's interesting though, because it's like the pro and the con of it is that you get to hang out with people that you don't necessarily work with, right? So there's no like office politics, you're just friend, you can just hang out. But I found that you didn't really get that close to them, or at least in my case, and I think in general, it's like anything else, you just have to be more intentional about it. When you work with people, you're just forced to interact with them. So you end up, I think, getting closer, than you would otherwise.
Yep.
I do want to make a concession to Eric. I did have my first startup job was in Atlanta, and it was in an office. So we had, I think, maybe 7 or 8 people at the top, the most people. And I went hiking with one of those people last Sunday. So they have, my in-office colleagues. I'm still friends with most of them, or at least kind of know where they're located. So, I mean, I totally do understand like the fun of that. I think, in a place right now, I'm in a good spot to work remotely.
Yeah. I don't know, like I sometimes think like if there was a really cool team like here in Austin, like I don't know, I might like to just it would be kind of fun to be a part of a team. I do feel that way sometimes. So yeah, I guess concessions being made all around there.
Well, now we still feel like a team now. I remember back in the day when we were first getting this thing started, when it was like, less than 500 customers. And it was like, hey, we're online, at 10 at night talking to each other. Like, what can we do? How do we leverage this or whatever? So I think just because we're not there in person with each other, you still have that really strong, feeling of, I don't know, being a member of a team, especially when you're in the struggle, when you're first getting started.
Yeah. I remember there was a ping pong table at the last co-working space, and like we'd play ping pong like almost every day. I just loved playing ping pong. And then they closed down the ping pong table because they had to move some offices, relocate some offices to that room. And it was we were laughing about it like, I'm so mad at them, but it kind of killed like a decent chunk of my social life, which was kind of sucked.
Yeah, for years at Classy Llama during the lunch break, we'd go out and do hacky sack.
Yes, I'm a huge hacky sack fan.
Oh, love it. I need to revive that because it's been a few years. But of late, we have Nerf darts all around the office. We'll shoot each other. There's just, I don't know. There's so much fun that happens being in the same space.
Can we hacky sack at the next Magento event that we're all at? Let's do it.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I'm so down.
Yeah, we actually one time we evolved hacky sacking into hack wars. We'd have like a dividing line and we have teams, and you have to like kick the hacky sack at another person. It was intense. So intense, in fact, that somebody broke their toe, filed workman's comp, and we had to shut that thing down.
That's
we can sign
wild.
waivers. It's fine. Sounds amazing.
We've got that's awesome. We've got people in the chat. Guys at the Zilker office are here in Austin, so I might have to check them out. And then Joel Hart, if anybody wants to co-work in Colorado, they can check them out in Boulder. John Swords mentioned he was in a startup with 90 people, 70 remote, 20 in office. We held quarterly retreats to build relationships because the water cooler chat never quite did it, which is really kind of what we've been saying here. What are what are you guys doing? Start with Jen. Like any like those thoughts or plans that you guys have to sort of obviously already have a great culture, great team, doing amazingly well. But any plans or ideas to sort of continue to improve upon, iterate, and improve upon the company culture, team building, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, we just hired that director of people ops. And so she's really, she's coming guns blazing. She's just, she's a senior at what she does as well. So she's doing things like, well, those skill shares I talked about, but also we might do like a monthly like language thing where we all get together at lunch and try to speak a different language kind of thing. So now that we have somebody in charge of culture, and she's gonna just like we do with the product, she's gonna like test stuff, A/B test, like, hey, this worked, this didn't, this created culture, this made everybody mad at each other or whatever. So we have her doing that. Yeah, other than that, we are kind of at a tipping point. 39 people is pretty crazy. It's going to be a lot harder to get us all in the same place at the same time. People are going to be busy. So I think that's going to be TBD to see how we do, but we are committed to it. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, we know how we want it to be, and we're committed to making it happen. So we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Do you have any idea of what sort of head count you guys might be planning to be at a year from now, 2 years from now?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Yeah. I don't know. As somebody who's been there, I think I was like number 9, but I was a contractor 2 years before that. So I've been there pretty much since the beginning. Like, it's just, to me, it's crazy. But yeah, we will probably be over 50 in 2019 for sure.
Nice.
And I mean, don't quote me on that. That's just that's what I see happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Eric, anything that you guys are doing to just continue to kind of iterate on and build your culture?
Yeah, we moved somebody similar to Taxstar. We actually have someone now who's really in charge of our culture, in charge of events. She's doing an awesome job with it. And there's a lot more to our culture than just us hanging out. I mean, from the very beginning, we focused on a lot of things like coming to work and being your full self and not having to kind of check part of who you are at the door. So a lot of conversations and topics that you typically wouldn't find in an office environment, we have those here. And there's just a lot of, we want to develop people both professionally, like their hard skills, but also their soft skills and who they are as a person. So we're starting to do more cultural training and putting more of an emphasis on that.
Nice. What do you guys actually, to take a step back, like, what do you guys think culture is? I mean, it's a company culture. It's sort of something that has become a bit of a buzzword. Some people say, hey, culture isn't, ping pong and things like that. It's more than that. It's your values. What is culture? What would you say to that, Jen?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me answer this one because we just sort of iterated our core values. Like, when we were, 5 people and it was all, people that knew each other, it was pretty easy to, okay, these are our values. This is what we do. It's remote. It's listening to customers. But we had to we made a little, these are our 4 core values. We made that. We wrote a blog post about it. It's over at life.taxstar.com if you want to read it. But yeah, and it's all about listening to customers, being remote, making e-commerce simple. And I think that is what makes a culture. And when you grow and you have new people coming in and they're remote, they're not going to just know that these are our values. You have to hit them over the head. Like, hey, look at this graphic. These are our values, get with the program or go home kind of thing. So, and maybe not that harsh, but, and I totally forgot something. We just started like a $1,000 a year personal development program. Like, we have all these great perks. Like, we have perks I don't even know about. So yeah, that's another thing we're trying to do. So like you said, Eric, with the kind of, be your full self, letting people do personal development. I'm doing mine next week. And so I'm very excited about that.
Nice.
I'm curious to know what, first of all, what are those 4 values? I think you kind of touched on them, but what they are. And then I'm also curious to know what you're doing for your personal development.
Okay. You know what? Why don't we talk about my personal development first? Because I remember 3 of the 4 core values. I know. I got myself fired. I'm fired. Whoops. No, hopefully that won't happen. So no, I'm doing a writer's retreat, and I decided just to go ahead and do that writer's retreat in England because I can. So that's what I'll be doing. That's what I'll be doing for the next 2 weeks. Yeah.
Writers, writing, creative writing.
Yes.
So cool.
So we do the right thing for our customers. That's our number 1 core value. And that's easy. We're quick to refund. If we did something wrong, if we did something wrong and it's like 2 cents or whatever, we're still going to tell you because we, do the right thing. We're a team. We're built on trust. Very important, especially the remote thing. We have to trust each other. You have to trust that, hey, I'm going to give you something to do. You've done it. We're very proud to be remote, and we're in control of our own destiny. And that means being like really fiscally responsible, not taking on any more investment than we had to, and just, shareholder value and all that stuff. So yeah, those are the values.
Very nice. Very nice. The writing thing sounds cool. What are you going to do? Like, how does that?
Well, I'm chief of content at TaxJar, so I'm a writer. That's why I write a lot of things. I make videos and stuff. But yeah, so this is more of a fiction writing retreat. However, that was my background before I came into writing in tech, and I think I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do, and I kind of have a different perspective sometimes. So I think this kind of thing helps. So yeah, just 5 days, no internet. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, that's amazing. Are you going to be like in a castle or something like that?
Like a manor house.
England?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
By a river. It's going to be really exciting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And TaxJar's paying for it, man.
What?
Just not the whole trip to England. Like, don't get me wrong, but they're going to pay for the actual tuition. Yeah. They're paying for the tuition for the thing. So yeah, super excited.
That's super cool. You're going to summon your inner Shakespeare while you're there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm going to write the great American British novel.
Are you working on a novel?
Yeah, of course. Like every writer's working on a novel,
cool.
Kaylin.
That's so cool. That's so far outside of my world. I can't even hardly wrap my head around it.
It's important. It's important to do stuff that's not in tech. Like it's important to like get out there and volunteer or just like have an interest that's not tech, because otherwise you can end up in a bubble. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Totally. No, it's true. Eric, how do you guys define culture over at the Classy Llama, other than having a word for absolutely every type of person?
including when you join as a llama, you're actually a baby llama is called a cria. So you're a cria at first. So, I'm probably not the best person to talk about this. There's a number of people here that could better articulate our culture. I would say authenticity is a big part of it, like being who you really are, not having to put on a front, or if you just have a bad day, like we don't want you to be like, oh yeah, everything's fine. We want to know who you are. We want to know what's going on. Taking risks as an individual, not being afraid to fail. We've really encouraged that. So we're going to be quick to push new people into greater areas of responsibility. Yeah, those are the main things that come to mind. I think there's a lot more information that I could share, but I just don't have it queued up in my brain.
Okay. That's good. I love it. Man, well, this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything, I know, Eric, you had put together a lot of items, and I think we covered most of them, although we haven't gotten too in-depth on your Nerf wars. Tell me about these Nerf war fights. This sounds like fun.
They're amazing. I mean, you basically divide the entire company into 2 teams. And there's all kinds of different game modes. We did one most recently where it was Hunger Games style.
Okay.
There's a huge pile of Nerf darts and ammo. We all started at one side of the property, and like the whistle blew. You had to run and grab a weapon. Every man for himself.
Right.
It was amazing. So
it's fun.
Can I come to that? I want to come to that so bad. I go hard when it comes to a good war. Laser tag, paintball. I'm down.
Hey, there's direct flights from Atlanta to Springfield, so come on over.
All right, perfect.
Nice. I love how we're just gonna cross pollinate. Like I'm going to TaxJar Fest. Jen's gonna be working out of the Classy Llama office. We're gonna have all sorts of hybrid situations going on here.
Yeah, This was not much of a rumble, really. No, we all ended up becoming great friends.
You guys are too cool, too friendly. Awesome. Well, anything else before we get ready to wrap up? If anybody has any questions in the chat we haven't gotten to, or Jen or Eric, I'll start with you, Jen. Anything else any topics we didn't get to yet that you'd like to throw out there?
I would just say, well, I'd be remiss if I did not say that we are hiring right now. So if it all sounded good to you, and if it didn't sound good to you, then don't apply at TaxJar, because it's probably not going to work for you. But yeah, we're hiring. I don't know, man. Yeah, being safe to fail, that's another good thing. I think the thing I really took out of this is that we're a lot like Classy Llama. Like we have so many similarities in the way we work and like how we all get along and stuff like that. It's just sort of, we've chosen 2 different ways to work.
Yep. Yeah. You guys, Eric, you're going to have to come up for a word for what TaxJar llamas are, that they're basically llamas, but they're not. But they're TaxJar. I'm sure you guys will come up with a word for
I'll give that to Kurt.
Jen, you mentioned safe to fail. What did you mean by that?
Try big things.
I think you said safe to fail.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And Eric had mentioned that too, that they give people responsibility. Like, we want you to hit the ground running, try big things. And you are definitely, if you try something, you're like, I think this is going to work, let's do it. And then it fails. Well, you're not going to get fired, not for being audacious and trying big things. Now, if you try like 5 ill-conceived big things in a row and it's, costs $20,000, yeah, it's going to be a problem. But we definitely want, we want you to bring your whole self, your creativity, if something we've never thought of before, your diversity of opinion. That is super important to us. We don't try to be like, this is how we do it here at TaxJar. We never want to be like that. We always want to be listening and try new things.
Right. When it comes to, like you're saying, safe to fail and allowing people, kind of throwing them at problems and letting them figure things out, like, what does onboarding look for you guys in terms of taking somebody, bringing them onto the team, trying, like, I know there's a trial period, but what does your onboarding look like to get people, up to speed? And by the way, Eric, I know that you might have to jump, so just let us know whenever you got to go, and we'll wrap it up quickly.
Yeah. Well, we do in the trial, we throw them right in, like developers, they get thrown right into the code. Like they have a project that they have to do. So, and that we think, that's the easiest way to do anything. Marketing team, I don't know, it can be a little bit different because it's not so project based or whatever. But yeah, we really familiarize people with sales tax and with the team. And that's why we made the core values, for instance, just so people know, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. If you have a choice, like, that you have to make, you're at a crossroads, we'll go look at the core values, and which that sounds so corporate when I say it like that, but it's really not that way. It's not that way. It's not. Like, I know, I was even like, core values, are you kidding me? Like, cause I come from small companies, but then we read them and looked at them. I was like, that is our core values. Dang it. You're correct. I was wrong to fight that. You're correct. So I mean, that's what we do. You will know if you want to work at TaxJar by the time you're through with your trial period. And if you don't, then, it's probably not the place for you. Right. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah. And then Eric, with you guys, were you kind of, like you said, developing talent, kind of building up your own talent and stuff like that. What does your guys' onboarding process look like?
So we have kind of an 90-day period where we really try to invest a lot in people, training wise, and then kind of at the end of that, we evaluate and say, hey, do you still want to work here? Do we still want you to work here? The vast majority of people that get through our initial interview process end up sticking with the team, but we kind of make that an intentional, 3 months in, are we both happy with how this is going? And along the way, we had different checkpoints. But really, especially I think with our development team, we have a pretty established process for training up those new developers because we kind of have to. But yeah, we invest a lot in people. We expect, we have a long-term view. Any developer I work with, I say, hey, don't worry if you're don't feel like you're bothering me. Come talk to me, ask questions. I want you to be here 5-10 years. So anytime I spend with you is going to have a long payoff.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. Beautiful, man. Well, Eric, any last topics we wanted to touch on before we get ready to wrap up?
I mean, if you're going to be at IRCE, or if you're there right now, probably not watching this, but imagine IRC. We love giving out llamas. We love sharing the llama love. So come by for a t-shirt or a plush llama. Kids and dogs love them. And thank you for sharing. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I can't believe I didn't have my llama with me. My kids love the llama. They play with it all the time. I got my TaxJar shirt. I really should have had my llama. So I want to apologize profusely. That was bad form. That was bad form.
Well, Kaylin, thank you for sharing your birthday with us.
Thank you.
You got it. Absolutely. I could think of no two better people to share my birthday with. And so that was a lot of fun. Thanks again for joining. Thanks everybody for participating in the live chat. And where's the best place for people to find you guys online, engage with you on social? Jen, start with you.
I'm TaxJar Jen on Twitter. It's probably about the best way to find me. Or you can always, send me an email. It's Jennifer at the place where I work. So you figure that out.
The place where I work.com.
Yes.
No, they have to be smart enough to figure that one out.
Exactly. I don't know. I know nobody's going to scrape this and get my email, but I'm still weird about that.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm Eric Hansen on Twitter and Eric at classcllama.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, you guys. And have a nice Thursday, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Kayla. Bye.